Stella had always been a humble and innocent girl nurtured by her caring parents in a loving and supportive home. She was their pride and joy, and they had consistently taken care to instill in her the principles of kindness, respect, and compassion. As she matured, Stella's parents chose to enroll her in an all-girls school, hoping she would thrive in an environment filled with similar-minded peers. The institution was recognized for its outstanding academic achievements and robust community spirit, and Stella's parents were assured that it would be the ideal setting for their daughter's growth and development. Initially, Stella felt thrilled to commence her new school. She was keen on forging new friendships and discovering new knowledge, and she immersed herself in her studies eagerly. However, as she adapted to her new routine, Stella started to realize that things were different from her prior expectations. The girls at her school were unlike those she had encountered at home, and they appeared to possess a more worldly demeanor. They often engaged in conversations about boys and relationships, and Stella would listen with wide eyes, feeling slightly out of place. One girl in particular captivated Stella's interest. Her name was Stephanie, and she was a senior at the school. Stephanie was stunning and self-assured, with striking green eyes and long, curly brown hair. She had a manner of walking that commanded attention, and Stella found herself continually drawn to her. As they spent more time together, Stella began to feel an unfamiliar flutter in her chest, a sensation she had never encountered before. She couldn't pinpoint what it was, but she couldn't ignore the emotions she experienced. As the days passed into weeks, Stella increasingly found herself in Stephanie's company. They studied together, went for walks, and shared their aspirations and dreams. Stella felt as if she had discovered a genuine friend, and she was thankful for the guidance and support Stephanie provided. However, as their friendship deepened, Stella noticed that Stephanie stood apart from the other girls in school. She was more self-assured, more outgoing, and more flamboyant. Stella was unsure how to interpret this, yet she couldn't help but feel attracted to Stephanie's magnetic persona. As the semester drew to its conclusion, Stella noticed her feelings becoming increasingly complicated. She had always identified as a straight girl, but her emotions for Stephanie were intensifying with each passing day. She was uncertain of how to navigate her feelings or make sense of her emotions. All she recognized was that she felt truly alive when she was with Stephanie and found it hard to envision her life without her. Little did Stella know her. Life was on the cusp of a significant change, one that would alter her indefinitely. The academic year was reaching its conclusion, and Stella felt excited about heading home for the summer. However, as she packed her belongings and bid farewell to her friends, she couldn't shake the sensation that she was leaving a piece of herself behind. She was aware that she would miss Stephanie and couldn't halt her curiosity about what the future held for them. As she exited the school gates, Stella experienced a sense of unease. She understood she would have to confront her parents and old friends, and she felt uncertain about how they might respond to the transformation she had undergone. Glancing back at the school, Stella was engulfed by a wave of nostalgia. She had developed and evolved significantly over the past year, and she recognized that she would never return to her former self. She felt anticipation for what the future might bring, yet she also experienced fear. She was aware that navigating the intricacies of her new emotions would be necessary, and she questioned her readiness for that challenge. However, as she distanced herself from the school, Stella felt an emerging determination. She was prepared to confront whatever lay ahead as long as Stephanie remained at her side. The summer unfolded before her, brimming with opportunities and uncertainties, and Stella understood she would face some difficult choices and was uncertain of the outcomes. Yet, as she walked away from the school, she felt a glimmer of hope, recognizing she would always have Stephanie and that together they could handle anything. Little did Stella realize their love was merely beginning, and it would lead them on an unforgettable journey. Filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension, Stella ventured into the unknown, prepared to tackle whatever awaited her. As the summer waned, Stella couldn't help but feel a combination of exhilaration and anxiety. She had spent the last few months reflecting on Sophia and the feelings she had cultivated for her. She had never experienced such emotions for anyone previously, and she was unsure how to manage her feelings. Nevertheless, contemplating Stephanie made Stella fully aware that she couldn't dismiss her emotions. She felt drawn to Stephanie's confidence, her beauty, and her captivating personality. Upon returning to school, Stella was eager to reunite with Stephanie. They had maintained their connection throughout the summer by exchanging letters and speaking on the phone. However, upon their reunion, Stella noticed a shift in Stephanie's demeanor. She appeared more self-assured, more sociable, and more flirtatious. Stella felt confused by this change but couldn't help but be attracted to Stephanie's allure as they spent more time together. Stephanie began to introduce Stella to her friends. There existed a group of girls who were self-assured, outgoing, and unapologetic about their sexuality. They were all lesbians and they were unbothered by who knew it. Stella was surprised initially, but as she acquainted herself with them, she started to feel a sense of comfort and acceptance. There was a group of girls who disregarded what others thought, and they were unapologetically themselves. Stephanie's friends were a varied group of girls, each possessing their own distinct personality and style. There was Rachel, the forthright and confident leader of the group. There was Jamie, the reserved and contemplative artist, and there was Mia, the lively and enthusiastic social butterfly. Together they created a close-knit circle of friends who supported and embraced each other for who they were. As Stella invested more time with Stephanie and her friends, she began to experience a sense of belonging she had never encountered before. But with this circle of girls, she felt like she had at last discovered her place. They embraced her for who she was, and they were unconcerned with her past or her family. All that mattered was the present and the future they would create together. But as Stella became increasingly involved in Stephanie's world, she started to observe a transformation within herself. She was growing more self-assured, more outgoing, and more audacious. She was beginning to challenge her parents' values and their expectations of her. She was starting to question if she had been living a fabrication, if she had been feigning to be someone she wasn't. As the weeks transitioned into months, Stella found herself becoming increasingly immersed in Stephanie's realm. She was participating in parties, visiting clubs, and experimenting with her sexuality. She was experiencing a feeling of vitality, feeling liberated and feeling like she could be true to herself. But as she gazed into the mirror, Stella couldn't help but ponder if she was losing herself in the course. Was she turning into someone she didn't recognize? Was she morphing into someone her parents wouldn't sanction? The more time Stella spent with Stephanie, the more she felt like she was treading on a tightrope. She was juggling her former life with her new one, attempting to appease her parents while also delving into her newfound identity. But as she maneuvered this delicate equilibrium, Stella couldn't help but sense a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She was undertaking a risk that could alter her life permanently, and as she stared into Stephanie's eyes, Stella was aware that she was prepared to take the leap. As the semester drew to a close, Stella discovered herself feeling more and more conflicted. She was caught between her previous life and her current one. Torn between her parents' expectations and her own aspirations, she was uncertain of what the future held, but she recognized she had to make a decision. Would she remain on the path she was taking, or would she revert to her former life? The choice was solely hers, yet as she gazed at Stephanie, Stella realized that she couldn't envision a future without her. As they spent more time together, Stella began to realize that Stephanie was not merely a free spirit but also a rebel. She consistently challenged the status quo, perpetually questioned authority, and frequently pushed the limits. As Stella became increasingly influenced by Stephanie's rebellious spirit, she started to notice a transformation within herself. She was growing more confident, more outgoing, and more stubborn. She was beginning to question her parents' values and their expectations of her. She was starting to ponder if she had been living a lie and if she had been pretending to be someone she wasn't. One day, Stephanie persuaded Stella to accompany her in a protest against the school's administration. The school had announced intentions to impose a new dress code, one that Stephanie and her friends considered excessively restrictive and conservative. Stephanie was resolute in opposing it, and she managed to convince Stella to join her. As they marched through the streets holding signs and chanting slogans, Stella felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had never been inclined towards confrontation, yet Stephanie's enthusiasm was contagious. She found herself swept up in the moment, experiencing a sense of pride and purpose. However, as they neared the school, Stella noticed her parents standing on the sidelines, looking anxious and disapproving. They had been alerted to Stephanie's influence and were determined to put an end to it. Stella felt a wave of guilt and apprehension, aware that she was about to confront her parents in a very public setting. As the protest reached its peak, Stephanie took the microphone and began to speak. Her words were fiery and compelling, and Stella found herself getting caught up in the atmosphere, cheering and chanting along with everyone else, feeling a sense of solidarity and purpose. Yet, as the protest concluded, Stella's parents approached her, looking furious and disappointed. "Stella, what are you doing?" her mother asked, her voice quavering with emotion. "You're not like this. You're a good girl, a respectful girl. What is Stephanie doing to you?" Stella felt a rush of defiance, knowing she had to defend herself and for Stephanie. "I'm not a good girl, Mom," she stated, her tone strong and unwavering. "I'm an individual with my own thoughts and emotions, and I won't apologize for my identity." As the confrontation intensified, Stella realized that she had gone too far. She had defied her parents, the school, and the expectations of those surrounding her. She was no longer the naive, demure girl she once was. She was a new person, someone different and someone who was resolved to create her own journey. As Stella walked away from the scene, Stephanie beside her, she realized that she had embarked on a journey that would transform her life forever. She was no longer the same girl, and she was prepared to confront the fallout of her actions. The question remained, what would those repercussions be? Would she be able to reconcile with her parents, or would she need to carve out a new path that was wholly her own? As the days passed, Stella's rebellion against her parents and the school administration only intensified. She and Stephanie were inseparable. They participated in protests, rallies, and other events that demonstrated their defiance against the establishment. Stella's parents were at their wits' end, trying everything to persuade their daughter to align with their expectations. However, Stella was resolute, committed to carving out her own path and living her life on her terms. The repercussions of Stella's rebellion were starting to become evident. Her parents had cut her off financially, refusing to support her way of life. Stella was compelled to find a part-time job to sustain herself and Stephanie, enduring long hours to support herself and Stephanie. Stella found happiness, genuine happiness. In contrast, Stephanie was thriving amid the turmoil. She was a natural-born leader, and her charisma and charm had brought together a large group of like-minded individuals. Together, they constituted a powerful force, taking on the establishment and questioning the status quo. Stella admired Stephanie's confidence and conviction and found herself increasingly attracted to her. As the semester approached its conclusion, Stella's grades began to slip. She spent more time with Stephanie and less time on her studies, causing her parents to be furious. They had always anticipated Stella to excel academically, and her declining grades were a letdown. Nonetheless, Stella was indifferent. She was too preoccupied living her life and exploring her newfound identity. One day, the school administration summoned Stella to their office, threatening her with expulsion if she didn't shape up. Stella stood her ground, defiant and unwilling to apologize for her actions, while Stephanie stood beside her, supporting her. They confronted the administration, refusing to yield or compromise their principles. The standoff concluded with Stella receiving an ultimatum: shape up and conform to the school's expectations or face expulsion. Stella felt conflicted, knowing her parents would be heartbroken if she were expelled from school, but Stephanie was resolute, urging Stella to stand firm and fight for her beliefs. As they exited the office, Stella experienced a sense of apprehension. She knew that she needed to make a decision that would impact the value of her life. Would she adhere to the demands of others, or would she carve her own route and risk everything? The choice was hers and hers solely. As they exited the school, Stephanie turned to Stella and grasped her hand. "I'm proud of you, Stella," she said, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "You're courageous and you're resilient. Whatever you decide, I'll stand by your side." Stella experienced a wave of love and gratitude towards Stephanie. She knew that she had discovered her soulmate, her companion in every way possible. Together they would confront any obstacles that lay ahead, and they would come out stronger and more in love than before. The school administration was similarly unhappy, and they acted on their threat to expel her. Stella had to leave the only school she had ever attended, and she was left to navigate the uncertain waters of her future. Stephanie was a pillar for Stella, backing her and motivating her to stay true to herself. Together they dealt with the repercussions of Stella's choice, and they strived to create a new life for themselves. They secured a tiny apartment in a vibrant neighborhood, and they began personalizing it. They dedicated their days to exploring the city, participating in protests and rallies, and standing up for social justice in spite of the difficulties they encountered. Stella and Stephanie were joyful, they were in love, and they were resolute to make their relationship succeed. They spent their evenings nestled together, viewing movies and discussing their dreams and ambitions. They were each other's support, and they realized that they could tackle anything as long as they were together. But as the months passed, the truth of their situation started to dawn. Stella's parents had severed her financial support, and she was finding it hard to make ends meet. Stephanie was juggling multiple jobs to sustain them, but it was difficult. They were barely managing, and they recognized that they couldn't continue living like this indefinitely. One day Stephanie returned home from work weary and disheartened. She had been working relentlessly for weeks, and she was at her breaking point. Stella noticed the strain it was taking on her, and she understood that she had to take action. She sat Stephanie down, and they engaged in a lengthy discussion about their future. They were aware that they couldn't maintain this lifestyle, but they were unsure of what other options were available. One day Stephanie's activism took them to a small town in the countryside where they were participating in a rally for social justice. As they strolled through the town, Stella noticed a small church with a sign that said "God loves you." She felt an immediate urge to enter, and Stephanie, seeing her uncertainty, encouraged her to trust her instincts. Entering the church, Stella encountered a compassionate pastor who heard her story and offered her comforting and guiding words. He imparted to her the teachings of the Bible, and she was moved by the message of love and redemption. She started to realize that her desires and emotions were not in accordance with God's plan for her life, and she felt a newfound sense of conviction to change her ways. The pastor prayed with Stella, and she felt a burden lift from her shoulders. As she sought forgiveness and deliverance, she recognized that she had been living a life that was not pleasing to God, and she wanted to make amends. With the pastor's guidance, Stella began to understand that her relationship with Stephanie was detrimental to her, and she faced the challenging choice to end it. Stephanie was heartbroken when Stella revealed her wish to terminate their relationship. She had never experienced such a strong connection with anyone else, and she couldn't fathom why Stella was leaving her. Yet Stella was determined, knowing that she had to listen to her heart and act righteously. As Stella distanced herself from Stephanie, she felt a mix of sorrow and loss, but she also experienced a sense of peace and freedom, recognizing that she was finally taking the right steps. She returned home to her parents, who were thrilled to see her. They had been praying for her deliverance and were thankful to have her back. Stella's parents welcomed her back warmly, and they collaborated to mend their relationship. Stella expressed remorse for her past errors, and her parents forgave her. Grateful to have their daughter returned, they participated in counseling sessions together, addressing the issues that had caused their rift. As Stella reflected on her journey, she acknowledged that she had been misled by Stephanie's influence. She had been entangled in a lifestyle that was unhealthy for her, and she felt thankful to be liberated from it. She understood that she still had much to learn, but she was eager to embark on her new journey, one rooted in her faith and values. The pastor who had helped Stella find freedom from her desires became a mentor for her, guiding her on her spiritual path. Stella regularly attended church. Surrounded by people who cherished and supported her, she discovered a renewed sense of purpose and meaning in her life, and she was appreciative of the love and forgiveness from her parents and her church community. Ultimately, Stella emerged from her experience with a newfound appreciation for her beliefs and her family. She had experienced a challenging period, but she had emerged more resilient and insightful. She understood that she would forever be thankful for the affection and assistance of her parents, and she was eager to discover what lay ahead for her. As Stella sat in church enveloped by her loved ones, she sensed a feeling of tranquility and satisfaction. She recognized that she was precisely where she was intended to be, and she was thankful for the path that had led her there. She beamed, realizing that she was cherished and pardoned, and that she would always find a home among the individuals and the faith that she cherished.